What's going on, everybody, and welcome in to this edition of the STL Sports Central's presentation of Cards Central Postgame, brought to you by DraftKings. The crown is yours. How about that game by Andre Pallante? How about that game by the St. Louis Cardinals? The offense coming to life. Mason Wynn with a big bases-clearing hit to help power the Cardinals in a 7-1 victory. Welcome into the show. Let us know your thoughts. Drop them into the comments section below as you join the live chat. Cardinals really got things done tonight, but yeah, after the weekend kind of ended on a sour tone, perhaps not enough to avoid the Cardinals being sellers. So we will take your trade deadline thoughts as well, with the deadline coming up later this week for the St. Louis Cardinals in Major League Baseball. I'm Brenden Schaeffer, joined by Ethan Hannaford tonight. Ethan, how about that outing by Andre Pallante? We know starting pitching has gotten the Cardinals into a hole recently. That was not the case in this one.
Yeah, encouraging, right? Encouraging to see this out of Pallante, who everyone at this point knows the story with him. There's going to be nights where the contact is going to play to his advantage. There's going to be nights where that hurts him. Tonight, it most definitely played to his advantage. First five innings, just one hit allowed, five no-hit innings, and then the first hit I think allowed to start off the sixth inning. So a very sharp outing by Andre Pallante. Overall in this one, you had looked at his previous three startings, and it was about as ugly as it had been all season for Pallante. So for him to be able to get back on the right track is encouraging because, to be quite frank, as you said, the pitching has been atrocious. It has been pitiful the past several weeks, extended now for St. Louis. And I know that, they even talked about it on the broadcast tonight, how good the bullpen has been. The bullpen is not going to be able to pitch at the quality that they have if the starting pitching is not able to help them out a little bit. And tonight, Andre Pallante was able to help out his bullpen. Steven Matz, nice and clean. A little bit of trouble from Matt Swanson there in the ninth inning, but he's able to work through it. And the Cardinals get a nice 7-1 win, and they can enjoy this one and hope to, look to take the series tomorrow.
And by the way, with Matt Swanson, I didn't know he had 100 in his bag. Maybe I was missing the boat on that, but I believe I saw triple digits tonight on one of his fastballs on the broadcast. So that was something I wasn't expecting to see. But nevertheless, you mentioned it. And look, with Pallante in the final line, 7 innings, 1 hit, 1 walk, which is a key for him as well. 4 strikeouts. He's not going to be a huge strikeout guy, but the contact, as you said, Ethan, favored Pallante tonight. It's one of those deals where you kind of have to decide philosophically, what do you feel about this player? You have to take the good with the bad. If you're going to take him, you got to take the good with the bad, and there will be some rough nights. But as an example, a guy that everybody's been clamoring for all year, Michael McGreevy, very similarly profiled, he had the bad side of contact over the weekend when he gave up 7 runs. So, again, you might say philosophically down the road, how many of those types of guys do you want in the same rotation? But I also think if you've got a rotation where eventually you get to develop some of the young power arms that can move toward the front of the line to be paired with guys like McGreevy and Pallante toward the middle or back. You can live with that if you're the St. Louis Cardinals. Although we do have to talk about probably the unfortunate news from today, which was Tekoa Roby going on the injured list. Well, he had been on the injured list, but we found out the reason why. He's going to be there for a while. A Tommy John surgery for him a number of days ago that's going to tank him for the rest of the year and likely all of 2026. We'll continue to talk about the game, Ethan, but that's obviously something on Cardinals fans' minds tonight. Your thoughts on Tekoa Roby and generally the state of the Cardinals minor league pitching staff that was supposed to be the group of guys that would give you depth this year. And unfortunately, due to injury, it just has not materialized.
It makes me look at this comment from Jeff and scratch my head a little bit and say, really, who's going to replace him?
Just coming. Yeah.
Who's going to replace him? Because, we already knew that the Cardinals, potential rotation pieces in the minors was very slim pickings. And Tekoa Roby was the guy it felt like that had been making the most strides to be potentially a guy that you can maybe see at the end of the year. Maybe. But if not even that, a guy that felt like he was making big strides to be making an appearance at some point in 2026. This one hurts. This one hurts a lot. Because it feels like it's all of a sudden a pretty big step back until your next guy's ready. Quinn Matthews doesn't look anywhere near ready. We know he's been banged up at times this year. The velocity was very low in his last outing. I'm wondering if they're going to shut him down at some point because it continues to go in the wrong direction. Just doesn't feel like he's has been able to build off of the progression that he made in 2024. Outside of that, who feels like they're close? No one. And it does become a concern, right? Because if you're one of those people out there that feels like the Cardinals are going to be ready to compete, or we're going to be ready to compete or be closer to that in 2026, now it doesn't quite feel realistic because we know what this front office's mindset is as far as bringing in talent. They're going to spend more in this upcoming offseason than they did last offseason. I can guarantee you that. They're going to spend more. But we know how expensive starting pitching is. And we know that the mindset was getting back to leaning on the development. And the Cardinals, because of the injuries that they have had to deal with their minor league pitching, the latest one and the most severe one being Tekoa Roby, it doesn't feel like you're anywhere close to having any more guys ready to go right now. Who knows? Maybe Quinn Matthews has a phenomenal spring training and you're feeling much better about it. Maybe, things turn around for him in the last couple of months of the season, but it doesn't feel like it's trending in that direction. This is a big concern right now for the Cardinals as far as them taking steps in the right direction for 2026 and assuring you, right, that they're getting closer to being a competing team. This is a tough blow today for Cardinals fans.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And it's mentioned by Steve here. Well, you can move Eshawn up to AAA. Eshawn Henderson has been a really solid arm down there at AA. There's been a number of guys in the Springfield rotation, some of whom, like Tekoa Roby, had been promoted or are on the cusp of being promoted. But the AAA rotation has really been like a cursed group this year when you think about the number of injuries. And Tink Kent's another guy that had been at Springfield. We haven't really seen much of him. We know Jerpy had the Tommy John. We know Robertsa did as well. And then you start to get into it with Robertsa of like 40-man roster to keep some of these guys that were on the minor league injured list. You'd actually have to call them up to the big leagues in the offseason in order to then the next year take them off the 40-man roster. I could see Robertsa being a casualty of that. I don't believe Roby will be. I think that even though you're talking about a long wait, they like Roby quite a bit. I think Robertsa, I'm not sure that he will last through the winter in the organization, but I truly have no idea. But in terms of, what you mentioned there, Steve, with Eshawn Henderson, yeah, there will be guys that I think continue to get looks and promotions as the season goes along. But the point is you can't count on these guys to be part of your mix for February 26. And really the only guy that could have an outside shot at that is Quinn Matthews. And again, with the way that his season is gone, he spent some time on the IL with shoulder, which you hate. And now he's dealing with decreased velocity. And again, we're not down there at AAA watching his starts or talking with him. But from a distance, it does look a little bit concerning. And so we'll see what ends up happening there. I kind of agree with this from Samuel when you're thinking about next year.
I was about to bring this up.
Since he was dominating early in the season, I have said, look, I would bring Leahy to spring in February and use that 6 or 7 pitch mix that he possesses and stretch him out. I'm not saying that you can expect to get a whole lot for him, but think about the last 18 months or so of Kyle Leahy. Before that, you probably didn't think the world of his future anyway. A guy that we thought at best is going to be kind of that middle relief type and then evolves into more. To give that guy a shot, it's like, okay, what if you blow out his arm? Well, you could blow out anybody's arm. They've blown out prospects with way more pedigree than what we thought of Kyle Leahy coming in, which is not to say just be kind of flippant with him and don't care. Have a purpose with what you're doing with everybody, but I would stretch out Kyle Leahy because if he can be a back end of the rotation guy that can give you serviceable league average starts and you don't have to go get that from somewhere else and overpay for it in free agency, that's the path to the Cardinals remaining competitive in 2026 on the cheap. And Curtis Taylor, he's another guy. He's like 29 years old, not really a prospect, but maybe we see him for a spell down the stretch. You can't hardly count anything out, Ethan, because understanding the deficit organizationally when it comes to starting pitching. We love what Pallante did tonight, and it's an example of what could happen if you just continue to stick it out with him. You might not get number 2 stuff. You might not get number 3 stuff, but he could be a number 4, number 5 in next year's rotation. Chewy wondering if he'll be the Libertor in the way that Libby kind of emerged from the shadows. People did not expect it. I don't know what you think about that, Ethan. I remember doing the show with you, the final spring training game that Libertor started, and we're like, hey, Libby's starting. That's interesting. And it wasn't something that was on our radar, but we sort of kind of positioned it as well. If you're in a retooling type of season, you want to maybe find out if this guy can possibly be a starter for you. From that standpoint, I agree with the comment, Ethan. You could look at it that way from Leahy if the Cardinals decide they're not going to go out and spend heavily in free agency.
There's a lot of ways that the final 2 months of this season could go. Obviously, the goal I think is still going to be to continue winning games. That's always the goal in the clubhouse. But the way in which that gets done, we saw it. I thought tonight seeing Ivan Herrera in left field, I thought that was pretty telling of where of the direction that the organization, that management thinks they're going. That felt like, and we'll talk more about that, I'm sure, but that felt like such an opposite of a typical Cardinals decision, right? They normally operate so conservatively, and to send Ivan Herrera out there after getting reps for a week and a half in the outfield, it just felt so opposite of the Cardinals. Maybe we see them operate in that way, perhaps with a Kyle Leahy. We saw him throw 49 pitches in Colorado. Maybe we see them try and stretch him out to have, we know he's done a lot of 2-inning outings this season. Maybe we see them try to mix it up with him and give him some opening looks. I don't know. The Ivan Herrera, the decision to have him in the outfield gives me an idea that the Cardinals have an idea of where they're going for the remainder of the season. And I wonder if maybe you use that same mindset with a guy like with Kyle Leahy. Experiment a little bit here in the later stretch of the season, post-trade deadline, where there's going to be some openings, there's going to be some spots to fill. Maybe that's something you consider doing so that you don't feel as like you're nearly as behind the 8 ball going into 2026 in spring training as you kind of do right now. There's going to be plenty of time to map it out. But as of now, you know that Sonny Gray is going to be there. You know that Matthew Liberatore is going to be there. And you know that Andre Pallante is going to be there. Michael McGreevy as well. Those are the 4 you feel like you have a pretty good chance that are going to be there. Are you looking in organization for that 5th spot? Are you looking to add via the market? I'd be surprised if they're looking to add via the market. I'd be curious to see what exactly they do with Kyle Leahy and what the mindset ends up being with him. But I think we can all agree that as of right now, in the state of where they are right now, there is not a pitcher in the minors that feels like you're like, yep, they're going to be ready to go for 2026 in that starting rotation.
Yeah, if you had to start the 2026 season today with the contracts as they are, Leahy might be your best choice for the number 5 starter. But I do think the other part that could come from this is a trade where they get a controllable arm for one of their controllable bats, whether they're adding a pitching prospect to a bat to get to that starting pitcher. But it could also be, I've pounded the table for guys like Reed Detmers, Taj Bradley. If you're talking about those types of names, there are question marks associated there too. So those types of guys, even if you traded for them, could come into a spring training and not win a job. So there's risk associated there. But I agree with you in terms of like the free agent market. I just don't know how aggressive they're going to be. I agree it'll be more than the $2.5 million they gave to Phil Maton as a full off season. They'll do more than that, but I don't know by how much they'll do more than that, which could be interesting. It was mentioned about Herrera in left field. I want to get your expanded thoughts on that. But easy for me to look at it and say, hey, defensive replacement of Garrett Hampson in a game that you're leading. That's kind of the name of the game. I mean, if you're up 2-0, yeah, I think he pinch ran and then stayed in for defense. That's kind of the name of the game. You know that he might have another at bat, Herrera, but if he does, it means you probably scored a bunch of runs, which is exactly what happened. So I don't really have any issue with that for the guy that played his first game in left field, first game in the outfield, probably of his life at night, like under the lights. I doubt that it has ever happened. So with that being considered, yeah, it's for defense. I am sure that would be the case. But your thoughts on them? I know you kind of touched on it, Ethan, but rolling Herrera out, I had said before they even ever told him that he was going to pick up an outfield glove that I thought, man, going into spring, certainly that's going to be something that he'll have to do because he's not going to catch. I've been trying to tell people since almost this spring that it just was not going to materialize the way they thought for him to be the everyday primary behind the plate. It's like you said, is it just a case of, well, because it's teetering more toward might be more of a retool year after all, and the standings may dictate that you can try some things. They probably don't go so aggressively with doing that so quickly, if not for the idea that they're probably looking to do some selling in the next couple of days anyway.
I mean, you look at this team, and the issue has been the same all season long. There is too many redundancies. There is way too many guys that you feel like, and Herrera a little bit different than some of them, but to a certain extent, he's also the most extreme in that he's not going to catch because you want to preserve his health. And you also have two guys defensively that you feel are way more capable right now than him in Joel Pozo and Pedro Pajes. So realistically, where else do you feel like he can play besides at DH? I mean, you got and you there's so many other guys, right? You have Contreras that's going to get some time in at DH and has. There's Gorman. There's Burleson. There's four guys right there that can DH for you. At some point, you have to figure out if these guys can play other positions. At some point, you have to figure it out. So there was a comment saying that Herrera is a DH. That's it. How old is Ivan Herrera? Ivan Herrera is pretty dang young and hasn't spent a lot of time in the major leagues. In a season like this, was I a little bit surprised that the Cardinals jumped to it as quickly as they did? Yes, I was. I did not expect to see Ivan Herrera in the outfield in 2025. It wouldn't have surprised me if this is what he was doing all offseason and working on. And then we saw him getting a lot of reps in spring training in the outfield. So I am surprised, but at the same time, I understand it because at some point you have to figure out who can you kind of vet out and say, okay, this is a guy that I feel like can be here long term. And I feel much better now that he can do more than just be at the DH spot. Because right now, I think even though you've got a little bit of an idea of who is who, I think that they're trying to vet out who are their guys for the future and who's going to get sold off in the offseason to try and bring in what you need. And I think I think they're pretty confident, right? I think most people are confident that Ivan Herrera is a part of the future. But I mean, eventually Wilson Contreras is probably going to continue to get more and more DH time. There's going to be guys you look at and you're saying, yeah, they categorize more as a DH. Ivan Herrera seems like a pretty athletic kid. So out of all of them, I think he's the one that makes sense to be able to put out there and to be able to track balls down. So definitely interesting. Like I said, a little bit surprised, but I think it's a continued vetting process of what it's going to look like in your lineup in 2026.
Yeah, and especially while you have Nootbaar on the injured list, we don't really know the future with Nootbaar. It feels like this was a year where with Nootbaar and Donovan, you wanted to see certain things. From Donovan, you've seen it. I hope that means extension. From Nootbaar, you haven't seen it. Durability. That's what you wanted from Noot, right, and you haven't gotten it. I'm not even commenting on his performance in the OPS or the different categories. He hasn't been able to stay on the field. I hate to hold that against the guy, but when it's been such a consistent trend and you're talking about spending money, like committing to a player, that's where I have to go, okay, probably not going to be in the extension talks, which means maybe you do have a vacancy in left field if they decide to move him with 2 years remaining on his team control. A couple of other trade thoughts. These all feel like they kind of go in conjunction, so I'll rattle a couple of them off. J. Call wonders about trading Gorman and then trying to trade Nato to where Weatherholt could be your third baseman next year. Whereas Chewy looks at it, do we have a possibility of trading Nato so Gorman could play third and be the main third baseman? I would say that could happen this week. I would not be shocked by an Arenado trade this week. I thought for a minute it was going to happen today. Ollie said just a standard day off for him, but also if they're working on some things, standard day off where maybe we want to make sure he doesn't do anything. He plays the game aggressively, and we might be talking about moving him. I wouldn't be shocked if that's the case. It's all about trying to maybe get out from under some money. And if you're not like balls to the wall trying to win the World Series this year, which if they're trading a reliever like a Helsley or a Maton, they're not balls to the wall trying to win the World Series this year. And then you can kind of flip it into, okay, if we can get out from under some Nato money. We've talked with Sonny Gray, who I saw from John Denton, reiterated he wants to finish out the season with the Cardinals, revisit it in the offseason if that's a case, but he's got the no trade, so he has that authority. But that leads into this from Mason Windu, Ethan. When you say they're gonna spend more in the offseason, do you think that total payroll will be higher in 2026? I like this question. I don't know offhand the exact number right now, but when you think about like Sonny's number goes way up, Arenado's number is still pretty high. those are a couple of the guys that could conceivably move off, but are they spending? And then you're going to have some ARB guys that get raised. Donovan's going to go way up. Newtbar will still go up. Pallante will still go up. How do you view this question? Do you think the payroll will be higher next year than it was this year? I think is a fun one.
I think so. I mean, this is like you said, this is a different question than will they spend more in the off season, because I do think that they spend more in the off season. Right. But this question is more so asking about total payroll. You have to consider, how do they view Sonny Gray? You could say, well, if you move on from Sonny Gray, then you're down another pitching spot, which means that you're probably going to be trying to use some of that surplus you have to bring in other pieces. I don't think that they shop or trade away Sonny Gray unless they feel confident in which they're going to be getting back at least one, perhaps multiple young, controllable pitchers that they feel like can be in their rotation right now from the surplus that they'll have. Samuel bringing up a great point here. Michaelis's $18.5 million will be coming off the books.
Yeah,
so that is something that'll definitely help. So
but can they outspend that? Can they outspend what's coming off the books? That I don't know that they will.
Steven Matz is 11 million, 12 million.
11?
That's gonna be coming off the books. Ryan Helsley likely won't be here. So when you scroll through and you look at it, I mean, I personally would be surprised if they're able to make something happen with Nolan Arenado. That's just my personal opinion. So as of
this
now,
week or in November too, like you think he's on the team next year?
I would say more so for this week
than
it is for November. But the question's going to be it's completely in his hands as of now. Unless he's willing to stretch out that no trade clause, then I don't think it matters. So
here's the trick with Arenado. That $15 million year that they added on to the end of it when he accepted the trade was just like some additional guaranteed money. It was like a kick in. But I am sure at the time he thought, I'm never going to play on that salary. I'm going to get a new deal here or somewhere to finish out my career. And he's not positioned right now to be able to do that. And so there's a lot of balls in the air when it comes to Arenado, because I know that year of 2027 is the final year on the deal. It was supposed to be a dummy year. It was supposed to be like, at least I get that if all hell breaks loose, but more likely than not, I'm looking for a deal going into 27 or going into 26 pertaining to 27, 28, however long he wants to go. That part of it is like he can't get that right now. He's going to have to play on that 15 million, barring a resurgence from him. And so that, I think, it muddies it up a little bit too.
Yeah, he's making 21 million this year, so it'll go down to 16 million next year and then 15 million in 2027. You mentioned Brendan Donovan. He's going to get a nice pay raise in the offseason regardless. It better be more than arbitration if he's still with the Cardinals. But
better be, man.
So I mean, that will be the heavy increase. Outside of that, I don't know if I see them extending anyone else. So when you look through the entire kind of loosely expected payroll for 2026, right now, the ones that I feel semi-confident in are still going to be there is Sonny Gray is going to be making 10 million more than he is this year.
I'm not even positive about that, but it'll happen in the offseason if it happens. He's going to kick that can down the road. But continue. I mean, that's a big number that helps the over.
And Brendan Donovan is going to be making a lot more than he is now. Those are my two educated guesses, I would say.
Yeah.
So without doing all the addition, I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no right now because I don't think that they're gonna bring in that big name. This isn't the season for it, or next year I don't think will be the season for it quite yet. I'm not saying that won't happen eventually once they feel like they're closer to World Series contender mode.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and say no, but I do think that they'll spend more than $2 million in the free agent market next year. I do think that.
I think you get like 3 or 4 Matons. Like even you spend 4 on this guy, 3 on this guy.
You're going to have to.
Yeah, and not just at reliever. I think a bench bat. They'll sign the Maton of the right-handed hitting bench bat. Those types of deals.
Harrison Bader
can play a little outfield for you too. I think those will happen. Pushing Daisies does ask, like, what's Bloom known for? What should we expect? We'll keep this one brief. I just think we don't really know, because we know what Tampa did when he was like second in command. We know what Boston did when he was in charge there, but they kind of had a desire to spend fewer dollars. This ownership, I feel like, could kind of be a blend of Tampa and Boston, where, like, okay, Boston spending less still means spending a ton of money, and they could sign Trevor Story. And I think this is going to be, there won't be the Trevor Story contracts that Bloom is going to be able to sign here. They're not going to look to overpay for anybody and sign. Like, Story got a big contract and it hasn't panned out. And Bloom, I believe, was the guy that inked him to it. But I also think you're going to be a step above the Tampa ownership with DeWitt, where, like, if there are players worthy of extensions, I think they'll get them, rather than literally, if you're within 2 years of free agency, you're a trade chip. I hope that is not the case with this ownership. But that's, like, we don't know what Bloom will do when he's with an ownership like the Cardinals, but we also don't know what Cardinals ownership would do, because I would say there have been times that we've assigned blame to Mozeliak for things that probably were coming from above. Yeah. And so we can't know that with certainty. And I'm not trying to point fingers. I'm almost just saying, like, sometimes we don't know what we don't know, and there could be more going on behind the scenes of something. And so, like, that's my quick thought on that. Sean of Loserville, I just wanted, he's just saying, thanks for not ignoring the looming lockout talks and effects they'll have on the next season. My thought with that, Ethan, and you can double back to the Bloom stuff if you want, but my thought with that is 100%. That's a big reason that they're not going to do a big splash this winter. Even if they thought timeline-wise they were ready, they want to see the dust settle. I think a lot of teams might want to see the dust settle.
I think this is way more than just the Cardinals. I think this is going to be pretty league-wide, and you're going to see probably a relatively quiet offseason. And you know what I wonder? I wonder who's going to cave first, because in the last couple of years, we've seen this really weird free agency mix where a lot of guys are waiting late, and it hasn't really favored players. Has not worked for players. So I wonder if players and agents are a little bit more willing to cave early, and we see as a result a lot of one-year deals, because, like you said, there's so many question marks as far as the future of Major League Baseball. I mean, we just had the leak today about Bryce Harper.
That's crazy.
And his choice words for the commissioner in the Phillies clubhouse regarding discussions for the upcoming CBA and the potential of salary caps. It's all I can say is buckle your seatbelts, because it's going to get interesting here down the road. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of question marks regarding what things are going to look like. And I think a lot of teams are going to be playing the conservative game in the upcoming offseason as a result.
That Bryce Harper one was interesting. I didn't read the full story close enough to know when exactly that happened. Obviously, Passan was just reporting it now. I'll go back and look. I wouldn't be shocked to find out it happened pre-All-Star game, because when Rob Manfred spoke with the Baseball Writers of America contingent there at the All-Star week, he mentioned this idea of, like, I'm like the 30, as Passan wrote, going into 30 clubhouses to talk about the future of our game and the challenges. And he even said in that meeting, I never said salary cap. But clearly, what was he kind of, that had already happened, and he knew that maybe that would come out. I wonder if that had happened pre-All-Star game, because that sounds a lot like what I read about him saying in the story. And Passan was clear to report that, like, so a couple weeks ago. So it close. I don't know if it was post or pre. If it was after the All-Star game that happened, that's super funny, because Manfred, like, there was very clear language that he used with the baseball writers to describe that, like, I didn't say salary cap in those meetings. I'm just trying to talk about, like, the challenges. And so, like, very much towing the line of what he's got to say in his role, that I thought was funny. We're going to get to more of your comments, because you guys are great tonight. Keep them coming. I do have to tell you, though, real quickly about an opportunity during baseball season, and heck, it's almost football season as well. And that's going to be a time, certainly, where you want to make sure that you have downloaded the DraftKings Pick 6 app, because it's your way to play for whatever sport you enjoy, and try to play for cash based on your knowledge and predictions for that sport. It's really easy. There's lots of players and leagues on there. You pick more or less on their stats, combine them into your entry, and the next thing you know, you could be winning big if you get all those picks correct. So download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use our code STL Sports. That's code STL Sports. It's right there on your screen. For new customers, to play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Better payouts, bigger wins, only with pick six from DraftKings, the crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick six not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. One per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable pick six credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at picksix.draftkings.com/promos.
A lot of people talking about the kind of salary stuff, and there are people that would be on the side of the players, people that side with the owners. My thought is I can just tell based on the reporting that there are two sides that are very, very far apart, Ethan. And we've kind of talked about this in the abstract of like, oh, yeah, there won't be baseball in 2027. But no, really, there might not be baseball in 2027. So we might have to kind of mentally prepare for what that looks like because, yeah, I mean, Jeff says there will be a season after next season. The world's not coming to an end. I don't know, man. If there is one, it could very much be delayed like the post-COVID season or even maybe a little bit worse where they will lose some games when it comes to that because very clearly, you know, whether you agree that they should or not, ownership in that side of things does seem to be on the sticking point of a salary cap. And again, you can understand why players would push back on it. I know that the contracts in baseball are guaranteed when other sports don't have it, but in the other sports do have a salary cap. But when you look at the disparity between the teams that do spend, which people blame the mega contracts for that. But again, the mega contracts are because some of the best players in the league are worth it. And when mega contracts are signed, those teams are going to have substantially higher payrolls. And there are just some teams that don't try. There are several teams that just don't bother, and it's a fraction of payroll. And so I think what ownership would want to see happen is, oh, yeah, we'll do a salary floor so that, you know, those teams are going to pay a little bit more. But what it's going to do is severely cap the upper end of players. And that's why a guy like Bryce Harper, not for him, he's got his contract. It's for the next Bryce Harper that Bryce Harper feels so strongly about the state of the league. And a big part of this is franchise values will go up if there is a cap on what teams can spend, because then no owner who feels like not spending is going to really have to be too guilty with the idea that they're getting doubled, tripled, quadrupled, quintupled by the Dodgers or the Mets, because the Dodgers and the Mets won't be able to spend that way. But for right now, the Dodgers and the Mets have just been a couple of the very few teams that are willing to pay for the superstars. And so, yeah, they kind of get them all. But I think more than anything, players would worry about a world in which, all right, the best talent isn't going to be valued at what the market would suggest they're worth, like it's been in the past. What happens to the guys in the middle and the guys at the bottom as a result? Like, fair questions, but I don't know if you have any takes on that or on the notion of a 2027 season in general. We will take your Cardinals questions, but I saw so many comments about it that I figured I would kind of give my 2 cents.
Yeah, no, I think it's good to at this point, right, dip your toe into the water a little bit and at least kind of give a general thought as to what this could look like. There are things in baseball, I think, that work, and there are things in baseball that can be improved. I'll tell you this much. You're going to take major steps back if you end up missing a huge chunk of the 2027 season.
Oh, the development problem
in order to figure all this stuff out. Baseball, yeah. I think, has taken some great steps in the last couple of years, has done some really good things to make the game more attractive to the fan, and to make the game more exciting. And this would be a huge step backwards if the Players Association and ownership cannot figure this out and come to an agreement, a compromise as to what the next CBA should look like. So there's going to be plenty more discussions to have in the future about that. But I think that in general, what everyone can agree on is they have to figure out a way to get something done. Otherwise, all of this great progress that you've made, poof, gone like that in a flash.
Yep. And final thought on that, salary difference between the biggest spenders and the smallest is 5.1x. For reference, most other major sports, somewhere around 2x. The teams that, yes, in those other sports, there's a salary cap, which allows that to be the case. But for baseball, we've already seen guys like the veteran class sort of lose out on opportunities. Like, for example, and I'm not saying that he would have come out and been a really good pitcher or a top half of the league pitcher. Like, Lance Lynn was really effective last year and couldn't get a team to sign him for what fair value would have been, in his opinion. And so he retires as a result of that. I'm just using that as one isolated example, but I think baseball's got that issue more. There's guys in the NBA that get these contracts where I'm like, he's still in the league. and he's making how much? And I get it.
Yeah.
The NBA makes more revenue than MLB. I totally understand that. But that's just sort of what I wanted to make sure to touch on. More Cardinals questions. We'll go for just a few more minutes with y'all tonight here on the Cards Central Postgame Show. All content on STL Sports Central is brought to you by DraftKings. The crown is, of course, yours. Will Doyle and Franklin pitch at all this year? Talking about guys that were drafted by the Cardinals coming out of college. Both Tennessee guys there, if I'm not mistaken. I would be surprised if the Cardinals are very aggressive at all. You kind of think about guys that go deep into the College World Series. They did this with Quinn Matthews the year that he came out. A lot of good it did him if he ends up on the injured list. But I would be surprised, Ethan, in general, if we see those guys or see them much. You might see him like get a touch in rookie ball just to kind of say they did. But beyond that, I don't think anything substantial. Just my 2 cents. I haven't heard anything on that. But that's my guess. If they haven't started now, it might be very much a rarity to see them.
I agree. I think that if you see anything, it's going to be just a baby view of it.
An inning in rookie ball.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about them potentially making a run through the systems, then there's no chance that that's happening this year. These are two big names as far as the Cardinals making sure that they get things right, that they can see the future of the big league club with these guys wearing the birds on the bat, and you want to make sure you get it right, especially with Doyle, a guy that you drafted so highly. Don't rush things. Don't make sure you get it right. Make sure you get it right. So obviously they're going to be getting work and they're going to be doing things wherever they get assigned. But this isn't you treat pitchers differently than you do, in the JJ Weatherholt getting sent to rookie ball last year.
Right.
Chase Davis, these guys in the past couple of years, when you're getting to see them immediately, it's not quite the same with pitchers. There's just, the way in which things are done, the programs, there's all kinds of things that have to adjust and change as to how they're done at the major league level. So I would be surprised if you see them on the mound professionally this year. If you do, it's going to be probably later in the year. You mentioned them being in the College World Series. I know that on draft night they asked Doyle if he had thrown. He said it would take a couple of weeks for him to ramp up. So we'll see what happens with them. But if anything, it's going to be rookie ball late in the year, just getting a touch of this level of that level. But I'd be surprised if it's anything more than that.
Yeah, he threw 95 2/3 innings this year with Tennessee, did Liam Doyle. Just as an example, and I'm going to go to the very upper echelon, top of the mountain, a guy like Paul Skeens, when he was a prospect coming out, threw 122 innings for LSU, and he was like a rare breed workhorse. Even his professional standing in 23 that year he was drafted, though, threw an inning at rookie ball, 3 innings at A ball, 2 innings at AA. It was just to get a touch because, they knew he was going to be a fast track into the big leagues the next year. That was the extent of it, even for Paul Skeens. So if he even does throw, if it's more than 5 innings, I would be blown away. So just my 2 cents on that. We'll try to get to a couple more comments before we get out of here. I do want to mention, I saw this earlier, but wanted to pick a time to mention condolences to the Sandberg family. Of course, Ryan Sandberg, it has been reported tonight that he has passed away this evening. Obviously a Cubs legend. Lots of rivalry times there with the Cardinals, but of course, our condolences go out to the Sandberg family. Believe I saw 65 years old, so that's really a shame. And a Cubs legend for sure, and we know that's a rivalry with the Cardinals. But gosh, I mean, anytime you lose a baseball giant, a great like that, you hate to see that, Ethan.
Yeah, I mean, it tough to see a baseball legend go so young, especially after a very hard fought battle with cancer. Heartbreaking. It is. This is a loss for the Cubs family, and obviously, while the two are big rivals, this is more than just baseball. This is the baseball family mourning together, and remembering all of the great moments that he had. The way that people talk about him off the field as well. The Ryan Sandberg game against the Cardinals that outshined Willie McGee's, arguably the greatest game of his career.
It would have been the Willie McGee game. It would have been.
It would have been. So, absolutely. So much respect for Ryan Sandberg and his impact on this Cardinals-Cubs rivalry, as well as just the game of baseball. Very sad. Baseball loses a great today.
No doubt about that. Well, we're going to get out of here shortly. I'll ask about this. Your thoughts on what we're going to see here. Newbar and Gorman going to Springfield on a rehab assignment. Yeah. It's kind of interesting. The timing is interesting. Like, if they were both on the active roster, I could see a realm in which, like, they could be in trade talks this week. Because when you think about the glut of position players, I'm not saying they would be aggressive in shopping those players, but it seems like with on the IL, it's a lot harder to do. But maybe they come back and Ethan, the Cardinals find a little bit more of that left-handed punch that they've been kind of lacking in their lineup recently. We're used to the Cardinals being able to thump against right-handed pitching, but it's because of usually all the good lefties that are in there. Obviously, Burleson was in there tonight and had a really good game. Mason Wynn, we talked about having a great game. One good swing from Walker. And, hey, I like seeing Sajasi be able to get on base a few times tonight as well from the right side. But generally speaking, Newpark, Gorman get themselves healthy, back to the Cardinals within a couple of weeks, and maybe that's where they make their run after the All-Star break. Can I get you to, or pardon me, after the trade deadline? Can I get you to buy in on that as a final thought here?
I can get bought in on Lars Nootbaar and Nolan Gorman getting more time in 2025 to perhaps up their trade value for the offseason. How about that? Can I get in on that?
It's a possibility. That can happen.
I think that right now, I mean, we know that the biggest challenge, right, has been when this team is fully healthy. How do you find time for everyone to play? That's the question. So obviously, Ollie Marble, we've been talking about it on and off. It feels like for the last couple of months. At some point, Ollie Marble is going to have a much more difficult challenge to find time for all these guys. And now there's a new challenge in the outfield because Ivan Herrera is going to be out there too. But, as you continue to vet out who is going to be the guys that you would like to have stay and the ones that you'd like to have go, well, you have to make sure that even with the guys that could be potentially going, that they're still getting time and that you're making sure that their value is maintaining its spot or growing. I'll tell you right now, if Lars Nootbaar was healthy this year, first off, maybe he's not being discussed as another trade option, but also maybe we're not talking about him struggling as much as he is too. His numbers this year, he's at an all-time low as far as probably his value right now, or near a low, because of how bad the last healthy 8 weeks that he's had now are. So it'd be nice if you could get him back up here and up that value at least to where you can make a decision as to whether you want him to be your long-term starting left fielder or if it's time to move on. Same with Nolan Gorman. So a lot of question marks to be asked, to be answered still eventually. Would love to see those two get healthy again. And at worst, you have a group of guys that you can kind of take your pick with as to who you want for the future and who you want to move on from.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. And Newt would be somebody that I wouldn't have said his name in the trade context to begin the season. I thought he and Donovan were working to try to earn contracts. Whether they wanted them from the Cardinals or not, maybe would have been a different story. Donnie's done what I thought the Cardinals needed to see. I would have done it before the year before that, so you would have got a better deal. Nootbaar, I think durability was the big question with him. But to the point of Mason Windu, like, if it's anything like 2023, guys will be with a nick or a cut, they'll be going on the IL kind of prematurely, probably down the stretch. So we'll see what ends up happening there. We will also see what happens.
Brenden, you and I both know, as do a lot of fans, but being there every day, that was a long final couple of months of the season. So hopefully it's not as bleak as that. But, it could get interesting here depending on what the Cardinals do in the next couple of days.
It definitely could get interesting. And I was trying to find one more comment just about, hey, if they don't trade, if they trade, it'll be not till Thursday, and it'll be like right before the bell, rapidly happening. So, hey, man, we've got somebody marked it here in the comments too, exactly how many hours and days and minutes we've got left. Samuel had it for us. So we'll be approaching that deadline. Make sure to check out too, I believe Thursday morning, a good time to talk about this. I'll be doing a trade deadline special Thursday morning, like 8 a.m. with Joe Roderick, answering up to the minute info, and then they'll be going live again, I think, pre-deadline, so you can probably watch the deadline unfold with STL Sports Central If I had to guess, that's the way they're planning that show. I'm not sure 100% if he'll be popping in on the afternoon one, but you'll have me for the morning and probably a whole cast and crew for that afternoon special. Ethan, I don't know what your status is for that, but it'll be a lot of folks getting involved, I have to imagine.
Yeah, we'll also be having, we just announced that last week was our first episode of the Loose Sports Talk podcast, now being on STL Sports Central. So
there we go.
Those are coming out on Wednesday mornings. So we'll also have a new video out on Wednesday morning, breaking down some of the latest from the Cardinals and what things are looking like as far as the deadline goes and the latest that we're getting. So there's going to be plenty of coverage as to what the Cardinals are going to be doing at the deadline. Of course, the Cardinals don't play on Thursday, so there won't be any post-game show that night, but that there will be immediate reaction, and then Friday we'll get right back at it as to what this team's going to look like post-trade deadline. So this is the place for all of the updated information on your St. Louis Cardinals and all the sports teams here in St. Louis, right here on STL Sports Central.
Yeah, and so stay with us for that as we move along here on STL Sports Central. All content brought to you by DraftKings. The crown is yours. For Ethan Hannaford, I'm Brenden Schaeffer. We'll see you tomorrow.